So I want to tell you the story of Agdistis. I want to warn you in advance, first of all, that my house is probably noisy and I live right on a highway, so you may hear some traffic. My dog is also noisy. He is a snub-nosed chihuahua and very loud, and sometimes he likes to come in and hang out. So there you go. I also want to warn you that it's quite possible that this story may be triggery for you. There are a lot of things in this that are in the ways of all stories of mythology, kind of ooky. So keep that in mind. There is violence and sexual violence and gore and just people being buttholes. So if you'd like to watch the time lapse without the story, then just mute me. It's fine. I don't care. It's fine. So there are several stories of the origin of Agdistis. I'm going to focus on the one that I like the best. And by like, I definitely have some air quotes. Like. So Agdistis was born in the ways of a lot of these stories. This is in Greek mythology that we're talking about here, of Zeus. And of Zeus being his most Zeusy self. So there are two different ways that Zeus fathered Agdistis. One was that he had a wet dream. And when his seed spilled upon the earth got pregnant and had Agdistis. Another is that he got a little overbearing with the earth goddess herself and impregnated her against her will. I don't know which one of those I like the best. I don't know that I like either of them. But Agdistis was born with both male genitalia and female genitalia. And that made the gods real nervous. Because Agdistis was wild and unabashedly wild. And they did not approve of that at all. But supposedly Agdistis' blood caused madness, so they didn't want to inflict that madness upon themselves by just choosing to make Agdistis either typically male or female by removing or sewing up one of their sets of genitalia. So they dithered and decided that they would convince Dionysus to fix this problem. Because Agdistis having both and not having both sets had the drive and power of a male while having the capacity for empathy and humility of a female. Now these are like, traditional gender roles. I am I guess technically non-binary. So I obviously don't ascribe to these gender roles as a thing that needs to be, but so this is the, as in the histories written by men. So the gods were nervous about the potential power of Agdistis. So they sent Dionysus to take care of the problem. So Dionysus either got Agdistis drunk or didn't. There are, conflicting narratives on that as well. But while Agdistis was sleeping, snuck up and tied a rope around the male member of Agdistis and the other end of the rope around Agdistis's toe. And then as they woke, either startled by a noise in the woods or just, I think it would be more likely being startled, so we'll go with that one. As startled by a noise in the woods, woke up, kicked their leg, and tore off their male member. So the member hit the earth and grew into an almond tree, which brings a whole new meaning to almond milk. Ew. So there are stories of Dionysus being, quote, a womanly man. And there are stories with this, upon this act, feeling such remorse, that Dionysus then castrated himself. And in repentance of his deed, and spent time as a priestess of Cybele. Cybele is the mother of the gods. And there are tales in this, this being my favorite of the stories of Agdistis, that once the male genitalia was removed, Agdistis then became Cybele. And I love that, because there are other stories that Agdistis died of their grievous wounds. But I love the idea of them then becoming the most powerful of all the female gods, the mother of all the gods. So from this almond tree, and really that's sort of where the story of Agdistis ends. There are other versions, but I like the idea of Agdistis becoming Cybele, even though it gets a little incestuous here in a bit. But so we're gonna go with that. So Agdistis went into the woods as now Cybele to heal and mourn, and a river nymph came along at some point in the future and took her rest in the shade of this almond tree. And as in all of these stories, there are a couple different versions. She gathered up some almonds and stuffed one in her bodice for whatever reason. Like, why would you do that? Why would you stick an almond down your shirt? Or as she was gathering almonds, one fell down into her bodice, which makes a lot more sense to me, right? Like I don't typically mess around with putting nuts down my shirt. Innuendo. But you know, she could. Who am I to say? You do you, lady. So somehow an almond. Let's go with that. An almond ended up down her shirt, and when she went to dig it out later, she couldn't find it because it had gotten absorbed into her river nymphy body, and then she became pregnant with Agdistis. And then, sadly, once Agdistis was born, she just left him in the woods because, you know, what does a river nymph know about raising a baby? So she just left him in the woods, where he was then suckled by a goat. So there you go. And also was the most beautiful of all men and gods. The most lovely. So lovely that by the time he came of age, Cybele fell in love with him. Now there are stories. I have read so many stories about Agdistis, Agdis, Cybele, all of them. And they're in different mythologies, Greek, Roman, like all of this came from like Turkey. And so there's, you know how they were. They absorbed and reabsorbed, and like, that's just how it went. But Cybele fell in love with him. The family that eventually adopted him had different plans, though, and they planned to marry him off to a princess. There are tales that he was Cybele's lover for a while. Before this happened, there were tales that she just loved him from afar. I don't know which I like better, but regardless, he went to marry a princess, and that did not make Cybele very happy at all. So she showed up at his wedding. Now, if you subscribe to the idea that she is Agdistis, and her blood and very presence is enough to cause madness, it makes this all makes more sense than if you just say that she's a different goddess and just happened to make everybody go bananas crazy pants in the wedding. But she did. She showed up, everyone went mad, and in a frenzy, Attis cut off his genitalia. His bride cut off her breasts. His future father-in-law cut off his genitalia. Attis went into the woods and died in front of a pine tree. Cybele, so destroyed by this madness she had created, begged the gods to bring him back. And Zeus, being the utter douchebag that he is, refused. However, he did agree to keep Attis preserved forever. That you would always be lifelike, but never alive. So there are ideas with this that Cybele fell in love with Attis because he was born of her missing part, so that he was actually a part of her. And so she fell in love with him because he was her other half, her missing, her taken half. The jealousy of the gods and the douchebaggery of Zeus. But the idea that Agdistis would have been too powerful, that was the reason for all this trauma, because the gods couldn't handle someone with power. So I guess it makes me think about what our own powers are that are enough to make the gods nervous, and how can we live in that? How can we be powerful enough that to let us live would be too dangerous? And how can we embody that? How can we take Agdistis into ourselves to be more, to be whole, to be complete, and to be powerful? Because you are powerful, just as you are. And don't let anyone, especially the gods, take that away from you.